Hi, guys. My name is Andrew Banara, and this is On the Reel, a filmmaking podcast by VFS. With me is Casey Fehr.
Fair, yeah.
Fair?
Like going to the state fair.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
Casey Fehr, Fair Films. You are a cinematographer, a gaffer, and a cam operator. So I guess my first question for you, Casey, is what first drew you to cinematography?
I feel like it kind of just started out as just like, as a kid, I literally would like take my Legos and make movies with like my parents' like camcorder. And like, I thought I was onto something because I realized that I could like stop and start recording really quickly and then move my pieces and then start and stop and move them again. And it would look like this stop motion thing. And that was like, I'm literally like in elementary school doing this just in like my room. And I thought I was like a genius, but I just found out like that's how all movies are made, is just kind of stop motion and frames per second and all of that. So that's like what started like the passion. And then just growing up through middle school and high school, I started making videos and movies with my friends in the backyard and around the neighborhood. Went off to college and I started like volunteering with my church, making like videos and content with them. And that's where I think really developed the craft and like kind of like perfected, I guess, and like learned a lot of just storytelling and interviewing and getting behind the camera. So it wasn't until college that I decided to like really do this and pursue this as like a full-time career. So
That's really cool.
yeah.
It's so funny how that's how a lot of people start, is through playing with toys,
Yeah.
and using kind of their toys as actors.
Right,
I know for sure I've done that.
Oh, for sure.
I have a bunch of home videos, mixing Star Wars with G.I. Joes and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
So it's really cool to hear that that's kind of a very commonplace, in a weird way, like the actors are kind of in a grown-up way.
Yeah.
The characters that we developed in the toys that
For
we kind
sure.
of play with.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's just like watching movies and watching TV shows, and then we like want to emulate that or replicate that in our own imagination. So like using the action figures and all that. And like my sister and I were just like kids bored at home too. So it's like, what else are we gonna do? Let's sit in front of the camera and talk to each other and do a cooking show or whatever. And it's just like we were just bored, and so yeah, it just became an outlet.
It's fun that you say that, because that's how Bored of Film started.
There you go.
Like, we literally were bored and then we filmed. So that's why I called it Bored Film Studio.
Awesome.
So that's amazing.
That's perfect.
So this is something that I'm actually really curious about, because you are, I would assume, a cinematographer first.
Yeah.
How do you approach your visual storytelling through project to project? Like, how does that work? Do you have like a specific like lighting approach, or is there like, depending on the story, you will get like a specific camera, or are you kind of just dealing with what you have and then you kind of shape it there, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think for me, like I always just kind of pull from like what I have readily available and accessible, like gear that I own or that I can borrow. I can't really think of like too many sets that I've been on where we like rented equipment. It's mostly just been like all self-funded and again borrowing stuff. So I think that's a lot of like where practically and budget friendly like my journey kind of focuses on or stems from. It's like, I can't imagine doing it if I haven't like played with the tool before. So I don't really try things a lot for the first time without like testing it first and knowing that I can pull it off. Again, eventually, you run into cases where you have to like try new things and you're working on the fly and problem solving. But I feel like most of my projects, they're low budget, they're indie filmmaking. So it's like, what do we have accessible? What can we make work? So I think that's been my just approach, is like, what cameras, what lenses, what lighting, and how do we tell the best story with what we have?
Yeah, it's like you are maximizing all of the, I guess, like tools that you have.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like pushing every single, I guess, like cent of the dollar that you can have for whatever project you have. That's really
yeah.
cool.
And I think too, like you run into like locations where it'd be like, it'd be great to do a book light here, but you just don't have the space for it. So it's like, all right, what can we make work? So I think that's kind of the other approach, is every project, and I think that's what I love about filmmaking, is every project is just so different and so unique, even if the stories are similar or whatever. But The
There's like a
locations
different
are
approach to every project.
for sure, yeah. And you're gonna step onto even though you're shooting in a million Airbnbs, they're all got a little bit of character to them and different challenges where it's like we got to get a light right there. How are we gonna make that happen? So yeah.
And what's your process on deciding a film's look?
That's a great question. I feel like I love collaborating. So it's a lot of just working with the director and even like art department and the gaffer. Like there's a lot of times where we might walk onto a set and you have so many different creatives and like professionals that are really good at what they do and how they all work together. Like I don't know if I'm so much of a stickler where it's like I have a certain vision or look or whatever, and that's like this end all be all. For instance, like I walked onto I was doing a short recently, and the director was like, I don't want any color. Like I just want it to feel natural. We're not going for like an A24, like you know what I mean. There's just wanted a natural lighting. And then we walk in the set, and then like the gaffer like put up kind of like this orange light in one of the rooms, and I was like, I feel like the director's gonna hate that, but he likes it, and I kind of like it, and I'm down for whatever. So I think that's just the thing is like checking in. The director is the end all be all, in my opinion. It's always like, what is their vision? How do I help create that and bring that to life? Mm-hmm. But I do appreciate getting the opportunity to,
Mess around.
And like try different things. And, if there's a space for a different shot or a different angle or whatever, getting the opportunity to just try those things. But again, it's working with those other departments that I think is always kind of interesting and brings a lot of dynamic to every project.
How do you balance that between the gaffer and the director? Because I know the gaffer will probably have their also interpretation.
Totally.
So how do you manage that between the gaffer and the director?
Yeah, I think as a DP or as like the cinematographer, I see my role on set, or at least in that position, kind of like the liaison between the director and the rest of the crew. I see typically I like working with directors that are more like talent focused, and they're like working on the emotions and the motivation, and I can handle like keeping the crew in check and like making sure we're on schedule and we're moving and all of that. So I think that's kind of the dance that I usually like to have with a director. So that's where it's like working with the gaffer or art or whatever and saying like, okay, I already have these conversations with the director, and I feel comfortable like making some decisions or making some final says on things and being able to say no, or like we don't have time, or let's try that. I think it's just the balance that you have to constantly be navigating on a set. So again, it's one of those things where I love collaborating. If we have the time, I'm down to try anything, but sometimes you just have to like know what the director wants and if it's even worth trying it or not. You know what I mean?
It's funny that you say that, because I feel like the DP kind of lives in two worlds.
Yeah.
And I think also the director lives in all worlds in a weird way.
Totally.
Like he has to work with the actors and, like you said, the emotional state, and then we have the he also hits the technical side with the DP.
For sure.
And to some degree, especially like depending on the set, I think more for commercial work, the director is more so like the leader of where, like what we need to do, rather than like the emotional aspect.
Totally.
Or like
I can see that.
Whatever the narrative work is.
Yeah.
But I do like that. I like the idea of the DP kind of being the bridge between both creative and technical.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think too, like every director is different. Some directors that I've worked with, don't have a shot list. They, lean on me to create the shot list, and they're just like, hey, it's fair game. Do whatever you want. You know what I mean? So, and then you have some that are very particular and they think through camera. I think, I think it all depends on just who you're working with and navigating kind of the different personalities and all of that. So I think like as a DP, like I said before, it's always my goal and my job is to create and bring to life the vision that the director or like the client has. So that always comes first, and it's like put my own little like things aside, or my own opinions if I have any. But again, I like the collaboration aspect too. So
talking about specifically with narrative filmmaking, what would you describe as like your distinct style? Like what would separate you from let's say other
That's a great question. I don't know if I have one. I think the biggest thing is I'm not a huge handheld guy. I think I lean into handheld when I'm doing like dialogue, or the camera's really not moving a whole lot, but I want it to have like this organic kind of feel to it. But I don't do a lot, or I don't typically envision like a lot of like run and gun, handheld, shaky cam. So I think that's probably the only thing that maybe separates me a little bit, or maybe could lean into my styles. I like doing stuff on either like a gimbal or a Dana, or something that's kind of controlled, versus like handheld. But again, when I go to like a close up or we're doing dialogue coverage, that's when I'll like throw on the easy rig and have it handheld, just to give me a little bit of life, but not so much that we're tracking with somebody as they're walking across the street and I'm, clunking around and all that.
Yeah. So like talking about like motivation with camera, like what's something that you try to strive for when trying to put in, because there's different story elements, right? Of who's telling the story. When you tell your story through the cinematography, what's something that you try to look out for with the camera movement and how you set up the actors, and it's look more direct, but you know what I mean?
Right. I think that, it kind of comes into like, for instance, like I think a lot of times when you're looking at a scene, the first thing I want to see is like the blocking, like what is happening in the scene. And then how can I make the camera almost like another character in that scene? And I think that's like, my lens or my thinking process on like, where am I putting the camera, and is it going to be a high angle, low angle, tracking, not tracking, are we doing a 2-shot? I think that's where it gets kind of really fun, that you can play with what is the message or the underlying tone that we're like trying to convey, and how can I use camera or cinematography to like help enhance that story. And sometimes you don't have time for it, but like I will write a shot list and I will have like 7 shots, and we only have time to do it in a wide angle 2-shot, and we're moving on, so like that's just the nature of the beast sometimes. So you have all these like dreams and aspirations and ideas and grandiose plans.
Dreams and aspirations.
And you have to like, stuff hits the cutting room floor.
I love that so much.
So I think that's the biggest thing though for me, is just how do I make the camera become an extended character in the scenes, and
I love that.
Emotionally, subconsciously tell some of like the power dynamics or motivations or whatever.
Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah. And so what is like a misconception that most people have about cinematographers?
That it's easy. I don't know. Sometimes I'm on set and I'm like, I have the easiest job. I just point a camera and hit record, But I think like there's just so much that goes into, knowing settings. And I'm just by no means an expert or like have made it. I feel like I'm always like wanting to like lean in and learn from other people. So I feel like, there's just, I don't know about it, like misconceptions or whatever, but I just feel like there's always so much to be learning, and there's always like new stuff coming out. So it's like, you're just never done. You're just never, I don't feel like I've ever made it. And I always try to like make my next piece of work like the best, and then I look at it like 6 months later, I'm like, oh, this is junk. Like, what was I thinking?
It's funny. I feel like that's growth, though. I think if you like I was reading this article a long time ago about photography, and there's this stage in my life where I was like super adamant about improving, and the article said, you're growing when your old stuff, you don't like your old stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of powerful, and it is indicative of growth, where you're thinking, damn, I could have done better.
Oh, totally.
So you're not looking back. Yeah. Essentially, you're looking forward.
Yeah. Actually, one of my goals this year is to take some of my past projects that I made like back in like 2020 and redo them, like shot for shot, but now with like the camera, the lenses, the lighting that I have, and like just reimagine them. So
I love that so much.
Yeah, so that's one of my 2025 projects, is just recreating some of my old work.
So what's like a dream project that you have?
Dream project? Oh man, any project. I would say working on Game of Thrones when it was good. Like that was like the dream. And I would just like, I always told myself like I would run coffee if I was on like if I could just be on that set. So I would say like, I love fantasy. I love action. I haven't really done a lot of action, like narrative stuff. But I feel like that was my first love, was like watching Braveheart and Gladiator. And like, that's what I think like got me into.
That was like peak war movie.
Oh,
like
for
2000s was like Lord of the Rings, Troy. Exactly. You know what I mean? That was
exactly. So I was hyped on all of that. So now it's like, so I think doing some sort of like blockbuster action movie would be like.
But within like a medieval.
I think so.
Or-
I think
or-
medieval would be really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And so, for beginner filmmakers, and this is kind of for the people that are listening that are trying to step into a new film scene, what would be your advice and your approach to someone who's like says like, "Hey, Casey, like I'm trying to get into the film industry. What do I do?"
Yeah, I actually have gotten this question a lot of just people wondering like what it takes to get into the industry or how do you break through. And I think it's really hard. I'm in my 30s and still trying to figure it out. So I think like if you're in school, fresh out of school, like trying to figure out what is the next pathway for you, I would say the biggest thing is just try to get a full-time job anywhere within your field, like working at a studio or anything that can get you behind the camera or editing or whatever. I feel like everything is going digital and everyone wants video for their marketing and commercial and company or whatever. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for young filmmakers to find a position within their field, and it might not be the most glamorous thing, but as long as you're getting some experience and exposure, and even if like, you're not having to fund getting a camera or paying for this editing subscriptions or whatever, and if a company will do that for you, that would be, and that was kind of my approach, is like I had a full-time job and I was able to pay the bills and still learn a lot. And now it's become, I still have a full-time job, I'm still paying the bills, but now I have time to like do some of this hobby stuff on the side that I love doing and enjoy doing. And now I'm trying to just figure out what's the pathway of like doing more of what I love that will also pay the bills. It's like I love making videos and editing and shooting, but it's, a lot of commercial work or it's a lot of marketing stuff, which isn't as, not as fun sometimes or not as glamorous, whatever.
Yeah, glamorous would be a good word for it.
It's like we would all love to do the Hollywood big budget films, but so I think that would be my advice to somebody starting out, is just try to get a full-time job or a job anywhere in your field. But it's tough because you have to also like leave yourself open for opportunities and unpaid work. It just is kind of the nature of it, but you build those connections and network, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing. I know it's like a crack of like, I'm doing this for exposure, and I think that's sometimes a trap, but you have to kind of like balance it out, balance the scales, and say, is this worth it for me or not?
I love that, and I love the idea of just using the resources when you can. I think a lot of there's a lot of ego and pride involved, specifically in filmmaking. And I love that you say like, you said yourself like you're in your 30s. I'm in my 30s too. So like I totally understand where it's like film is almost a game for both. It's like like the older you are, the more skin you have in the game.
For sure.
It's a little easier, but then at the same aspect, it's like it's also way easier to jump on set when you're younger.
Right.
And not only just because you're young, but also energy-wise.
Oh, for sure.
Like it's so hard now. Thinking about like a 12-hour set, dude. I'm like, I have to get my rest, or I'm not gonna be able to function this set.
I started like where after every set, it's like I got a pain in my back, and like there's a needle going right through my shoulder. I was like, where did this come from? So I would say definitely if you have the time and you have the like bandwidth, I guess, just get on as many sets as you can. And again, work hard, have a good personality, have a good attitude, be friendly to everyone, because you never know who's going to like help you get to that next
It really is the network of the people that you know. I completely agree with that. And so with Fehr Films, like how did you begin that process of creating your own film company? And what was that like in the beginning?
So creating Fehr Films, it just started out like as an Instagram page that I had for years, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna like get an LLC, I'm gonna make this official. And I had actually made a couple other production companies with like a friend of mine, like partnered up, and we were doing a lot of commercial stuff. And again, it's all the marketing and social media content that's all the rage, and you could throw a rock and potentially find a client, you know. So that's what we were doing. And then we ended up splitting paths. He got a great opportunity and moved to Colorado for, again, is one of our clients was like, hey, I'm willing to pay you to come out and work for me full time instead of like doing a contract. Yeah. So he took that opportunity, and then so I was kind of on my own and just kind of figuring out what my career looked like and all of that. So I, you know, obviously talked to my wife, and we were like, I wanted to start Fehr Films, and it helped actually us kind of financially separate the two. Like everything that I make through Fehr Films could go back into Fehr Films and help pay for, you know, the computer and the software and the cameras and all the toys. Where I still had a full-time job that was paying for all like the bills. So my situation is a little unique because I have a full-time job, and then Fehr Films is like, it's not a hobby, but it's like everything extra.
Yeah, you're building.
Correct.
You're building,
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been actually a smart play to kind of separate the two in a way.
And it's cool because you don't have to justify,
Right.
especially when you have that like responsibility of having your own place and your wife and you know, your future kid and stuff. You're prioritizing that, but you're also able to be flexible with, you know, the investment in Fehr Films.
Yeah.
And so like when working with other film companies, like what's your initial approach on how to navigate like you with your film company? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Are you it's hard because I think you get into like, is it narrative or commercial? So
More so narrative.
Okay.
More so narrative.
Yeah, I would say, you know, a lot of the time it's just like, hey, just give me in association with Fehr Films, or, you know, just put my logo in the credits, you know, kind of deal. Because I have invested so much into equipment and gear, and a lot of these films, like Fehr Films supplies everything, you know, the whole nine. I think there was one that I was doing last year that was an ASU student film, and they were banking on ASU like lending them all their equipment and being able to use ASU's equipment, and they pulled the rug out from under them last minute. Like they're at the cage ready to pick up the gear, and then they said, oh yeah, we don't have an order for you. So I brought like all the lighting, all the camera, loaded up my whole car. So I think like when working with other production companies, it's kind of just like, hey, this is what I have to offer. I'm willing to lend in whatever you need, or whatever could just help the production. But if they have stuff, or they have a certain lens or camera that they want to use, I'm open to whatever. So I think it's just when working with other productions companies as far as narrative, and if I'm not getting paid for it, then it's like I would just love to have my brand kind of recognized a little bit, but by no means am I trying to like take the spotlight or anything like that.
I think that's really cool because you I mean, it's a win-win, right?
For sure.
You're getting your company out there, and also they're kind of getting exposed to what you have to offer. And in a weird way, you're kind of becoming a producer too,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like you're not necessarily an executive producer, but there's like a producing aspect
for sure.
too.
Oh, for sure. I think if you boiled it down, I think you could, because I don't know how much it would cost to rent all this stuff when I just get it kind of freely, and I'm happy to bring it on set and help out. Like that's the thing. But I don't see myself as a producer. You know what I mean? Like that's not like a credit that I strive to have or anything like that. But
it clashes with your low key cinematography,
right.
like vibe.
It's like I just want to show up on set and shoot. But yeah, I think it kind of just help. Again, I'm always happy to help, and I think that's the biggest thing for me is like I don't feel like I've really broken out in the local film industry here, except for like the past like year and a half that I've been really going into it pretty hard. So I think it's just more so I just got to get my name out there, and I will say yes to like whatever I can in order to, again, make those connections, make those relationships, because it only takes like one set for me to meet somebody that will get me paid work, So I think that's like kind of my mentality is say yes. It's hard now because I feel like with a kid, I have to be a little bit more strategic and a little bit more protective of my time. But I've kind of had the conversation with my wife, like, I'm going to give me a year to just go all in. So she's been really supportive and like in just leaving me that space because it is 12-hour days. It's weekends. It's sometimes, travel or whatever, going up north for like 5 days. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but she's been super supportive. And I think, that's just kind of the balance that we all kind of have to navigate.
I feel like that is the future of filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think there's this work-life balance.
Right.
And I think that's actually really beautiful that we're kind of striving to, not to say that there's ever been toxicity, at least from what I've experienced personally, but I feel like within older generations, there's this kind of like, you have to work and you have to work constantly and you have to sacrifice. I think this newer generation's like, no, I'm going to work hard and I'll get my work done, but I will also, be with my family when I need to. And I think that's very admirable. And like something that I really, really enjoyed, because we met on set, and I absolutely fell in love with you like immediately. I was like, this guy's fucking cool. I'm like, this guy's gonna be my friend. And then we went to a concert together.
Yeah.
And we got to go to another concert.
I know,
for sure.
for sure.
And so you're right. It's like you build a camaraderie and you meet people, and it's like, it's really nice to kind of build a community where you can just kind of be normal. I feel like with film, there's always this aspect of you have to be larger than life,
right,
in order for you to participate in the quote unquote like industry.
Yeah.
But I think especially with your story, it's very inspirational. I've seen you working, dude, and it makes me want to do even more. You know what I mean? I'm like, damn, I really have to step up. And I absolutely adore that, you're a very family-oriented person, but you work really fucking hard. And dude, I really want to work with you in like a DP director way.
Dude, same.
I was supposed to be the director for Spark.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And it conflicted with some personal stuff, and then with the For the Dreamer Fest. And Adriana was involved. And so I told them, like, if Adriana's involved, I'm involved. Like she's one of those people where I'm like, I'll do it if she's involved.
For sure.
But then I saw you were DP, and I was like, well, now I really want to fucking do it. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, he's DP. All right, I'm for sure going to direct this. Yeah. And then, again, there's some personal conflicts, and then with the For the Dreamer Fest. And I was like, I literally told them, like, I still want to do it, but could you move the dates? And they were like, no, we can't. It's set in stone. And I was like, I didn't know that. And so, I was a little disappointed because I for sure was looking forward to working with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, in the future, there's so many projects that we could do together.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Well, that's the thing too. It's like, I have like basically like those people in my life that it's like, it's a for sure yes, no matter what you need, I'm there, And so, but I feel like my list is just, because of the community, I think here is really fucking dope.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of really cool people that I work with on set that are like, these are just awesome humans. And so like, I feel like my list of like non-negotiable, like I got you, is like really long. And it's like, I owe so many people so many favors. But yeah, dude, I feel like ever since like, we've met, we haven't really got to like actually like go. Yeah. So like, it's just been like a couple of touch points here and there, but I see like the stuff that you and Nick are doing, and it's just like, it's like, if I could just rub shoulders with you guys, I feel like I would learn so much, because everything is just like spectacular.
Appreciate that, man.
So clean.
Interesting how many people are like involved in film that you wouldn't really think are in film, but it's like,
or like dabble, they're like, I do photography or whatever, and it's like, I get that all the time, like setting up camera or lights or whatever, and like people just kind of be passing by and then like stop in and be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh, guys, you have a business card? I was like, no, I don't.
Dude, who has business cards though? Who had a business card?
All my ago.
Speaking of which, what's your approach of like, I guess marketing yourself to people? Like,
oh man, it's terrible, because I don't even have like a website. I'm like so behind. But the thing is, like, I just get like good referrals and like word of mouth. So I haven't necessarily had like the need to really like cold call or make sales pitches or whatever. But I think like my approach is very So for instance, since like 2019, I was doing all like construction, social media.
That is crazy.
And it's like concrete, asphalt, roofing, home building. Like it's not necessarily real estate, but it's like people like putting up the frames and stuff. And I just kind of like fell into that, and that became like my niche of like, I know that I can go shoot a million asphalt companies and like know exactly how to talk to them, what shots to get, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you created a format in your head, like a formula. How to approach.
right. So it's like, it's not fashion, it's not anything like super spectacular, but there's big, like $1 million companies out there that want to do, that like want social media and are willing to, pay a grip for, a couple reels and some photos and stuff. So that was kind of like just my approach to marketing. And again, I don't have a website or anything like that because I have a portfolio that I can send to those people, to those potential clients. And it's got everything in there that would speak to them. So I think like, you really have to, I don't know if you would need to like niche, but I see like you have like your food photography.
Yeah, my food
stuff.
photography is like my quote unquote job.
Which is like a branch of like your own kind of like thing that you can do. And like, I don't know if anybody reached out to you because I sent your info to like a yogurt company that was like,
okay, sweet. Appreciate that.
I don't know if they hit you up yet. But I feel like that's the kind of thing, like you have built this portfolio and this brand where it's like, I know I can market to food restaurants and stuff.
Like anywhere I go in the city, I know for sure I could do food photography by
Right.
fly.
Right.
Or any of that stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's been like kind of my approach. And I think, to anybody kind of like listening or watching, it's kind of, and again, it could be anything. I do asphalt. You know what I mean? Like it makes no sense. But that's what I know I can like walk into a company and say, hey, I'll shoot you some reels. Let me know what you think. And 99% of the time, like I can get them on the line for some kind of work. So I think that's kind of the approach. And I think anybody kind of getting into it, it's good to niche and have a market or have like a strategy. But again, I'll do anything, weddings, it doesn't matter, music videos, I'm open to whatever, but I definitely have like my bread and butter, I guess.
Which is the asphalt. Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. I think it's really cool because like we talk about, I read this book and in this specific book, it's called bootstrapping, where you have your main job and then within your main job, you do your side hustle that you really want to do. And so that's how I got into the food photography. I do food photography. That's my quote unquote bootstrap.
Yep.
And then I do, BFS as like the film content.
Yep.
And I really like that. I think that's really good advice for people who also want to be in the film industry and they also want to do that stuff. But it's like, like you had said, it's still within the genre of what you're doing.
For sure.
In a weird way, it kind of recharges the creative too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like this kind of balance of like when you feel burnt out, you can still be working in your camera, still be, within that stuff, but it's not, it's not nothing that you're completely,
Right.
like outside of that.
Yeah.
So you talked about music videos. What would you say is the difference between like a narrative music video and like a narrative film within like your approach to cinematography?
I think like narrative music videos are interesting because I've done a lot because I think you have two types. You have like performance, where it's like the artist performing, singing, playing, whatever. And then you have like this subplot of whatever story they're trying to tell that goes in line with the lyrics or the emotions or whatever. So I think like there's some that are just purely performance. It's like, hey, we're going to get our band up there, we're going to play, and I want 9 different camera angles. You know what I mean? Like to just get all the
like
coverage.
all the roles of just
Totally. So I think like that's like one approach. And I know there was like a pretty successful like YouTube channel or something where that's all they did was just like you come to their studio, you do one take, they roll on 9 different cameras, and that's it. Like that's your thing. Yeah. So again, I think that's how they like marketed themselves and how they like advertised or whatever. But I think when it comes to like doing a narrative plot along with that, that's kind of different because now you're working with the artist and like what are their ideas, and then do you pull a director in the DP, you know, like how now you have a lot of like cooks in the kitchen.
How do you navigate that when you have like a lot of creatives involved and you're basically trying to, you know, still have some of your own I guess essence in that process.
Yeah. I think it's different because for me personally, like coming from like the camera side and like the DP side, like I cater a lot to like the client, I guess, or like the director, you know? So I am pretty malleable. Like I'm really not like pushing for my ideas or my, you know, I have ideas or I have suggestions, but it's not like, it's okay if that doesn't work or like that is not the vibe. So I think just having that kind of posture on a set or working with different people of like, it's okay if my idea doesn't win and being humble. So I think like that's one mindset for any like aspiring DP or whatever. Just know like, don't get your feelings hurt if your idea doesn't win or they don't like it or whatever. That's not what you're there for. I think I've been on a couple sets where I'm catering to the artist and I will bring in a director friend of mine because like my one stitch is like I am terrible at like directing talent. Like that's where I am like the least comfortable. Like I will be behind the camera, I'll handle the crew, but like directing talent and giving them like the pose and here's where you're gonna walk and all that. It's like I'm terrible at that. I will do it, but I just feel like that's not my.
You want your focus to be the I guess the technical aspect.
Right, yeah. So, but there's times where I'll bring in like a director friend to say, okay, the talent needs to focus on their performance and the lyrics and what they're doing, right? They can't be like worrying so much about background or whatever. So I'll bring in like a director friend and I have to like almost like preface it like, you know, you're doing me a solid because this person is very much opinionated on what they want their story to be and their song and all this stuff. So you might not have a lot of creative freedom as a director when you should. So I think there's some times where it gets a little dicey. And again, you just have to like balance the relationships and the vibe on set and kind of like, you know, who is this really for? The client is the artist in a way. So the director is there to kind of like really steer the ship at that point. You know what I mean?
It's almost it's surprisingly political.
It is.
You know, navigating all that.
Right.
And when you like with your specific camera, do you ever like have you ever had different cameras and do you prefer one specific camera, and if so, why?
Yeah, so my camera of choice is the Sony FX6. I personally just feel like that camera is great in every aspect. For me, as like a solo owner operator, I know I can go in and shoot and light and do the audio and be like a one-man band with that. And I know that I can bring it onto like a full scale production. You know, I think it's very versatile. So I just love all the like functions that it has. But I've been on sets where it's like we're shooting on a Blackmagic or we want to use a Red or, you know, an Alexa or something like that. So I think as a DP, you almost have to like be well versed in all aspects of the camera. And essentially, you know, you get one camera, they have the same functionality.
So with the Sony, what's something that you gravitate towards? If this like, is it the color or this, like besides it being like something where it's like an all-encompassing one? Because I can totally see that where, especially with like the auto settings, like you can totally be your own, like you said, like be your own crew member.
Right.
But is there like a color that you're drawn to, or like because you spoke about like the Red and the Aria, like what's your experience with like the color profiles there?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot you can do in post, and I do see some people really like just gravitate like we just got to have a Red. The red is the best. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of they make a name for themselves. I think Sony is doing a great job at like expanding. Like they're getting the Blackmagic B RAW, you know, firmware updates eventually. because I know a lot of people gravitate to the black
That's
magic.
actually insane.
It is insane.
That's insane.
It is insane because I know a lot of people love the black magic.
I
or
love the
color
black
science.
magic. Yeah, I think so. Like my studio specifically uses, besides the FX6, we use the Blackmagic 6K Pro.
Yeah.
And dude, yeah, the color science. I love color grading on the Blackmagic. It's beautiful.
Right.
And it has a distinct look to it. There's like a type of highlight roll off that's different. And I feel like, I don't know if I'm mistaken by saying this, but I feel like Sony is very sharp. You know what I mean? It's very professional. It's very, it's perfect.
Yes.
And it's very science driven. You know what I mean? And I think there's this kind of, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
So I think that's interesting that Sami's having Blackmagic Raw. That is
It's crazy. It's crazy. So that, because I feel like I gravitate towards the FX6 because I know that camera inside and out. I feel very comfortable. I feel like I can move quickly and efficiently with it. But I do see like, you know, people just have certain tastes. And I one of the, like I did a film challenge it was like a 72-hour film challenge or something like that. And the biggest complaint was that it was too crispy. Like it didn't have that like film feel to it. And some of that is like the lens choice or whatever. So I think you can like kind of make some wiggle room there, but I totally get what you're saying about it. It is like, it's perfect.
It's pristine.
It is. And I think that works for some stuff.
Yeah, well, it's very corporate.
Exactly.
A lot of corporate people use that camera. But
Exactly.
I think with like, which is pretty crazy, with like modern technology, you can make something look quote unquote film, you know, depending on like a Pro Mist or there's even, you know, plugins and that's another question. When you color a film or when you do cinematography, what's your approach to post-production?
Yeah.
Like, do you have a grade in mind or do you kind of light, you know, the way you light is what you're trying to get directly, or you rely like a bit of post-production? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so I think like basically post for me, like one of the things that I love about the FX6 is it's like Sony EI, which was really confusing to me at first, but essentially like it is always shooting at its native ISO. So even if you change the ISO to 400, 200, 1600, like it's always shooting at
the dual ISO or something.
Yeah. So if I know that I want to expose a stop over, then I know to drop my ISO down because I'm exposing for like middle gray or whatever. Like I'm exposing for one, like my eye is telling me to expose for this, but the camera is actually auto doing it. So instead of like trying to do this like math in my head or whatever, I just know, drop it down a stop or a stop and a half, make it look good to my eye, and then in post, all my shadows are saved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think like that's what I love about it. Because I think, you know, working with a Blackmagic or whatever, you'd have to like overexpose a stop and it would look shitty on camera, but you would know that like in post, it's actually better. Like I got to like really light the room to know that I can bring it down and my shadows won't be muddied or whatever.
What's like a filming nightmare you have with like lighting? Like, do you like dread night scenes or?
I think night exteriors are the hardest to do.
How do you like? Do you go day for night or what's like your approach?
Try to just emulate the moon. Like I think one of the sets that I did last year that I was the gaffer for, it was a lot of night exterior, and all I did was like fly a 600C as high as I could on like on a combo stand C stand. Like it's like combo stand junior pin into the C stand, like, and send that sucker all the way up. Probably not like super safe or OSHA approved or whatever, but that, and just put like a dome on it or a lantern and let that sucker be the moon. So yeah, I'm not a big day for night, but I was actually doing some research on like infrared of like how they like did some like the Dune stuff, or Nope was like all.
I heard about Nope.
Day for night, and they used infrared. So I was kind of, and I think like, you know, my you know, cheap alternative is like they make infrared like lens filters. So part of me wants to dabble with that of like do a day for night, use an infrared, and see what the effect is.
What other resources that you use as a cinematographer that kind of elevates what you do? Like pre, post, and during production? Like, what's like your arsenal?
A lot of YouTube University, baby. So planning for that night exterior, I just YouTubed night exteriors and just downloaded as much like, how do people do this? Like, what are some of like the tricks of the trade or like tools or whatever? So I think that's kind of been my approach. I'm a very visual person, so I need to see like a diagram, or I need to see, before and afters of like, this is with a lighting setup and this is take all the lighting stuff away, or this is one way to light it versus another way. So I think YouTube, there's a lot of great creators out there that are really talented and do a lot of budget friendly stuff where they're, it's like, we're going to light this with one light and it's effective. I think that was kind of one of the things that I said earlier, like, you don't have to overcomplicate it. I tend to, but like, I just want it to look really good. And so it's like almost like stripping stuff away and simplifying it. And again, knowing that like we could make one close-up shot look really pretty, but as soon as you go to the wide, now you're screwed. So it's like thinking through all aspects of the scene, right? Of like, how is this all going to play out? What is all the coverage? What are we going to see in the room versus what are we not going to see? Because again, you can dabble and tweak and make something look really pristine, but then as soon as you go to like flip the world, it looks completely different. So that's been my approach, I would say, is I light for the wide, and if we want to push in, but I think one of the things that like gets me on sets a lot of times and getting called back is people want to just move quickly. And I think I do a pretty good job of like being able to have the image be like 90%, and that's okay. Like,
That's interesting.
You know what I mean? Like that extra 10%, yes, it would be a better thing, but
it's almost compromising with the entire set.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily backing out of your vision, but it's more like, I understand, we have to keep moving.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah. I think, you don't want to be the detriment of the movie and not have time or not get the shot because you wasted time trying to perfect something that doesn't need to be perfect. Like, it looks good. So it's move on. Like, we're ready. And I think like that's just was liberating, just to like not have this perfectionism that I like put on myself. And just go freaking do it.
I love that, dude. Perfectionism. I think too much of a perfectionist mindset gets nothing done. I think there has to be some like detachment, just a slight detachment where you try your best, but kind of like what you said, 90%. You know what I mean? I love that. And then setting deadlines for yourself.
It's so crucial. I work best under pressure. So it's like I have to put a deadline. I have to and I think the thing too is like once it gets shot, I'm excited. Like I will go and edit that thing, every day. Yeah, exactly. But it's just like getting up the I think where I struggle is the pre-production planning stuff. And I think it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of intentionality to get the vision and see all the details. But it was a very liberating experience to put something out there that I could call mine, and so that's kind of just been okay, I can do this, should be doing more of this, that was the thing, because when I first started getting my breakthrough into the industry, I was gaffing a lot, because I think just people needed gaffers and looking for G&E and stuff.
Good gaffers are hard to find.
They are hard to find. I think even I sometimes I know 3, that I'm we'll call, and if they're busy, then I was I'm screwed. So, but that was kind of the gateway for me was just getting on set, even though I wasn't doing camera department or I wasn't DP necessarily, but I was just, again, getting into that network and then letting people know, hey, I actually prefer camera. I'm getting gaffer positions and people reaching out to me, and I will do that, and I love it, and I think it's a lot of fun. But I just had to
draw a line
and let people know, hey, I'm actually looking for these opportunities if you have them. So I think that's the thing, because I meet people on set and they are doing art department, and I immediately think, oh, that's what you do. But they're no, actually, I prefer directing, or I prefer writing, or
Dude,
whatever.
that's so common though.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to just be like, I'm gonna say no
Right.
and just stick to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you have to just, you know, take what you can get and then specialize, eventually make the switch and like say, this is what I want to get my name out there for. This is what I really want to pursue. But again, I think it's just, you got to take what you can get at some time. So
Again, interesting that you say that. The person that I usually AD for my sets, her name is Victoria Segura. And, you know, she loves to AD. And she's one of the best ADs I've ever personally worked with.
Yeah.
And so she moved out to LA. And prior, she was in. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but she was in New Mexico doing a lot of film work because there's a lot of film work there, and she was getting massive jobs with locations, and she was getting paid really well to do locations.
Yeah.
And she could have joined union in locations.
yeah.
And she was really struggling because, you know, she told herself like I'm in it.
Yeah.
I'm in the industry. I'm filming these fucking $1 million productions as a locations, but I don't want to do that.
That's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she actively made the choice and said, I'm done with locations. I'm only doing AD work. And now she's in LA doing AD work. And it's crazy. Like, you have to draw the line at some point.
Yeah, yeah. I think like my thing is like, you know, as a DP now, I'm looking for like people that are like dedicated. I'm a first AC, I'm a second AC, I'm an op, whatever. So it's like finding those people now that is like, I want to specialize in this is interesting because it's like, you know, I think a lot of people can do a second AC, they can do the slate, they can swap lenses and change batteries and whatnot. But it's finding those people that are like, this is what I want to do, and I want to be perfect at, you know, honing in this craft or being on set in this capacity. So I think that's like kind of the next step for me as I'm like kind of looking at people and meeting people. As
So are you doubling down on cinematography?
doubling down, DP, cinematography. I will cam op, you know, and I think
From time to time.
From time to time, I think, you know, it's still, again, with there's certain people that I look at in the industry that's like, okay, if I could shadow you, like I would definitely like, I will BTS for you just to kind of like just see how they work.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So I think there's, you know, I'm still to the point where I will PA if it's the right set, you know. But I think I'm definitely doubling down on the DP cinematographer position.
And okay, so I have two more questions for you.
Yeah.
Hot take.
Here we go.
AI, yay or nay?
Oh, man. I like AI for myself, like in a pinch, you know, I can do something pretty quick and dirty and it's passable. But I feel like there's so much craft that it just AI will never, in my opinion, be able to like do sound design the way a professional sound design artist will do it. And I've seen like, you know, the quick things where it's, you know, you plug in your long format video and it'll spit out 20 short form clips or whatever, and they're just not perfect yet. So I think AI is definitely kind of crazy, and you know, like I think like VFX and stuff like that might be where it's kind of heading. But I think there is still like the artist side of like an AI poster versus like somebody that's a graphic designer. I think the graphic designer will win, I would hope, but I think it is getting, you know, you put two and two
It's getting
side by
harder.
side,
It's
I
getting
think it'll
harder
be
now.
harder to tell the difference. But like I know like we used AI on one of my recent films where we needed like a family photo. So it's like we put their faces into like the AI and it spit out like, we don't have to go to the Grand Canyon and shoot them in front of the Grand Canyon.
So you could, like, almost AI could be used as like like what you said, like a quick pinch. Like you could utilize AI as a tool for like specifics like that. Where, you know, that's a great example. The Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, you know, they're getting married or whatever, and again, it's just a quick, you know, glance as we're panning down the hallway or whatever. These like photos to kind of get like the family dynamics or whatever, and that's what we used AI for, was creating these
actually so
dates and moments in their relationship.
Because even sometimes, like, there was this one particular time we needed to actually have a photo session between the actor and the significant other.
Correct.
And the significant other lived in New York.
Correct.
And it's like she's there for one day, so you have to take the quote unquote couple picture then and there, and then you do the scene then and there.
Right.
So it's like it's almost like, you know,
Yep.
there's no history to it.
Exactly. So it's like, you know, it's them with their dog, and like, you know, you in a quick glance, it's passable. You know, you're not doing like an extreme close up on it where the hands are all messed up, but you know what I mean? Like they have 3 hands, you know? So I think for stuff like that, where you're set dressing and kind of like telling, you know, again, it's a tool that can be used to help enhance the story.
I like that a lot.
And you just have to know how to use the tool.
Closing notes, my friend.
Yeah.
What are your closing notes?
Closing notes. I guess to anyone that is seeing this, whether you're trying to break into the industry or you've been in the industry for a long time, I think it all just comes down to being a good person. I think like working hard, building relationships, having a humble posture on set, having a good personality, having a good attitude. Like nobody wants to work with you if you're being a dick on set and you're, you know, lazy or whatever. So it's just, you have to show up, I think, and opportunities will come your way. I think there's been a lot of times where I'm not even looking for stuff and it kind of like falls into my lap and it's like only by God's blessing, you know, like that. It's like, wow, how is this happening? And just always be learning. I am by no means an expert. I've definitely not made it in my mind, which is kind of weird because I've had people come on to me on set and be like, "Oh, dude, I really like your stuff." And it's like, that is so weird to me because I just never like saw myself as that person. So just keep working hard, keep getting better, and that's my mentality, is just try to make each set better than the last and learn from my mistakes. So yeah, and if you've been in the industry for a long time, I think sometimes you can get jaded and bitter, and just know that I think you can lose your love for it, and that's something that I definitely
Keep the love for it.
Keep the love for it, yeah. Even though it becomes your day job and you have to work and sometimes it's not fun, but like being able to take those moments to like pour into like what I love and remember why, you know, I got into it in the first place. I think it's always good to have those outlets and those moments and kind of taking a step away from all the craziness that, you know, you get bogged down with. Yeah. But yeah, man. So I don't know.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Thank you so much. Casey Fehr Films.
Yes, sir.
Fehr Films.
Fehr Films. Yeah. Follow me on social media.